Godo was a pathetic delivery boy, so broke that he could never dream of getting laid. However, everything changes when he simps for a baddie so hard that he ends up destroying a deity to save her, granting him the power to destroy the gods and take their goddesses to do sinful things with them. It all begins when Godo tries to find his way around Italy, looking for a woman to whom his grandfather had asked him to deliver a stone tablet. While he wonders if a Rolls-Royce key is hidden in the stone, Erica approaches him armed with a knife and a language that sounds like gibberish. When he manages to introduce himself in English, the girl wonders what genius lets loose a dummy with spaghetti for brains unaided. She then tells him to hand over the grimoire. While his brain runs in a loop, Erica tells him she recognizes the grimoire because she's a knight of the Copper Black Cross. Godo then says he's only a delivery guy and can't grant her request. Before he finishes, Erica pulls a Catwoman move, making Godo wonder if he's being mugged. Suddenly, they get interrupted by the appearance of a heretic god. Just when Godo thought he should get her digits, Erica flees the scene on a ride driven by Ariana, her sidekick. While they approach the monster on a rampage, Erica gets separated from her ride and suddenly transforms into her work outfit. She then attacks the beast, but fails to land a hit. Meanwhile, while Godo runs like the loser he was, he falls and drops the grimoire. Just then, he meets Verith, a miniature god who reveals he's been reviving the old gods to fight them simply because he was bored. To stay out of the drama, Godo says he only came to deliver his grandfather's grimoire and asks Verith to give it back. Amused, Verith hands Godo the grimoire and says he entrusts it to him. While Godo thinks he must be delusional, a horse suddenly appears beside him and the grimoire glows. After this, Godo finds himself alone in the alley and wonders if he is high on something. Meanwhile, Erica battles the heretic god and gets tossed like tissues after happy endings. Luckily, Godo was right on time to save her skinny behind from falling. After this, the heretic god summons a tornado and disappears. Shortly after, Erica gives Godo a theology lecture and asks him about who he plans to deliver the grimoire to. He then reveals it's a woman named Lucretia. Erica then says Lucretia is a powerful mage and asks why she would give such a powerful relic to a man. In response, Godo says his old man is pretty good with his tongue. After this, Godo points out that the train must have been stolen and Erica says they could take her car. Just then, Godo says he couldn't pay her back since he didn't inherit his grandfather's skills. However, Erica responds and says she's more interested in the grimoire than his undersized magnum. A few moments later, after Ariana's highway to hell driving, they arrived at Lucretia's residence and got welcomed by a cat. When they met Lucretia, Godo was surprised, since he wasn't expecting to find a hot chick. Lucretia then explains she doesn't age and asks if Godo would like to check out her cookie. In response, Godo says he's saving himself for later.
It should have been me, not him!
After checking the grimoire, Lucretia tosses it back to Godo and says it is God's wish for him to have it. Erica then protests, saying Godo knows nothing about magic. Later that night, after emptying several bottles of wine, Godo helps Erica into a bedroom.
Yeah, boy.
Thinking he was Ariana, Erica asks him to get her zip. After he takes off her clothes, he gets a glimpse of heaven and quickly covers her up to prevent explosions in his brains and pants. However, to his dismay, Lucretia locked the room door. The next morning, Godo wakes up to an iron fist and a furious Erica demanding that he die on the spot. While Godo tries to explain himself, they are interrupted by a sound and a sudden downpour. Immediately, they went to check it out and found Melkort, a giant god, taking a stroll. Erica tried to engage him in small talk, but she obviously wasn't his type. After this, Erica says she has to prevent the gods from fighting since it is her duty as a knight to protect the people. Afterward, while Ariana drives them to the location, Godo recalls what Lucretia told him about the grimoire's abilities. She also told him that the grimoire contains one of Verith abilities. Suddenly, Erica approaches the gods and conjures a shield. Just as Verith and Melkort are about to rip each other apart, Erica interrupts and begs them to stop. Verith tries to take her out with several bolts of lightning, but Godo rescues her and drags her to safety. Facing Melkort, Godo offers to withhold Verith last power in the grimoire in exchange for Melkort's protection. Melkort takes the offer and conjures a protective dome against Verith attacks. Seeing this, Verith summons his golden sword and tries to cut through the dome. Just then, Godo uses Verith ability stored in the grimoire against him and steals his golden sword. While he wonders how to use it, Erica locks lips with him to activate the sword. So Godo claps Verith using the sword and becomes a god slayer. Later, in a dream, Godo meets Pandora, who tells him he's become a campeon for slaying a god. When he wakes and hurriedly dresses for school, he is surprised to find Erica in his bed with her rice cakes on HD display. She then asks him to get her some coffee, while he screams in despair. Shortly after, Godo's sister Shizuka plays Love Doctor, while Godo explains how Erica caught the love bug after they met in Italy. On hearing this, Erika reveals that they had a one-night stand and a kiss back in Italy while Goto freaks out. While they argued, Erika weaponized her melons and Goto lost his baritone. After looking away, he tries to take a peek, but his gets busted by Shizuka. Later at school, a classmate tells Goto about an Italian hottie who will be joining the class, but Goto's mind is riddled with flashbacks of his Italian adventure. Suddenly, Erika was brought to the class and introduced to the students. She then openly declares her love for Goto, surprising the entire class. After this, Erika compels a girl sitting beside Goto to find some other spot while he panics. Like ravenous wolves, the class boys pounced on Goto for ruining their chances of getting with the new baddie. While they try to rip him apart, Erika stoked their flames. After Goto manages to free himself, he grabs her hand and pulls her out of the class. On getting out, he discovers he pulled someone else who then introduced herself as Yuri. Later, while they go home together, Goto tells Yuri that Erika is just a love-struck fan. However, Yuri acknowledges him as a demon king and asks him to punish her for tricking him. While Goto's brains bailed on him, Amaterasu joins them and introduces himself. Afterward, he explains that he and Yuri are members of an organization that regulates individuals related to magic. He then reveals that Yuri was instructed to trick him into grabbing her, because the organization needed to make contact with him. Shortly after, Yuri joins them and apologizes for tricking Goto. Feeling awkward, Goto tells Yuri to cut the formality crap and call him by his name. Amaterasu then reveals Erika's involvement in the Copper Black Cross. Later that day, Goto arrives home to an annoyed Shizuka, who then plays whack-a-mole with his head. After this, Shizuka asks why he's trending on X for maltreating the hottest girl in school. In response, Goto says he's innocent, but Shizuka refuses to believe him, so he walks out on her. Afterward, he recalls Amakasu's speculation that Erika was on a mission to seduce him into joining the Copper Black Cross. While thinking out loud, Goto suddenly finds Erika lying beside him and flares up. He then tells her to quit trying to seduce someone she doesn't really like. In response, Erika suggests that they spend a day together so she can show him how she really feels. The next day, while waiting for Erika, Goto lamented about the cost of going back to Italy, just to spend a day with a baddie. In response, Ariana tells him to be patient and takes her leave. After this, Athena suddenly appears and challenges Goto to a fight. In response, Goto says he's not interested in a fight. However, Athena tries to attack him but stops and disappears when Erika arrives. Shortly after, Erika introduces Goto to the representatives of the Magician Society, who had requested to see how strong he was. Suddenly, Erika conjures her sword and attacks Goto with it. While they duel, Erika slices his shirt and Goto freaks out. After this, Erika conjures a lion of steel which attacks Goto, but he counters with the use of one of his abilities, surprising his audience of weirdos. In retaliation, Goto warns Erika and conjures a boar which wreaks massive havoc. While the representatives marvel at the sight and decide to entrust a divine instrument to Goto, he pins Erika to the ground and asks if she wants more action. Erika responds by saying they are in the right position for a celebration. Scared to be a baby daddy, Goto jumps to his feet and demands that she tell him how she feels. Just then, Erika confesses that she chose to be with him, not because he is campeon or by orders from her superiors, but because she truly loves him. After this, she conjures a strange-looking medal and shows it to him. Sometime later, while Yuri heads to school, Amaterasu intercepts her and asks her to verify if Goto has a round medal called the Gorgonian. On getting to school, she finds Goto, but cannot approach him because of his human shadow. Meanwhile, Athena could sense the presence of the Gorgonian, so she casts a spell to find it. Back at school, Erika ignores her overflowing male locks of romantic desperation and walks the corridor while other students drool in awe. On entering the class, she asks why Goto looks like a deflated balloon. In response, Goto says he's worried he's a dent in her otherwise perfect image. Erika then consoles him, saying she's all he needs to be happy in life. Having had enough of her BS, he leaves the class and meets Yuri, who then asks if they could talk later. Shortly after, Goto met Yuri on the roof, and she asked if he had the Gorgonian, a divine instrument that could bring the world into chaos. Goto responds and says she's mistaken since his grandfather's grimoire was enough pain in his butt. Afterwards, he asks Yuri what the Gorgonian looks like, and she describes the metal. Just then, Goto handed the Gorgonian to her and says he thought it was just a versus pendant. After getting permission to speak freely, Yuri makes Goto realize how much of an insensitive b*** he is. Later at the shrine, Yuri tells Goto about the prophecy of Princess Alice, which foretells the end of the world when a rogue goddess obtains the Gorgonian. Goto then asks if it could be destroyed, but Yuri says it can only be sealed with lots of time and magic. Erika then joins them and asks why Yuri is messing with her human toy. Yuri then accuses Erika of trying to kickstart the end of the world. Hearing this, Erika says only the Campione can decide the fate of the world. After this, she asks if Yuri could scan the Gorgonian using her spirit vision. When Yuri does that, she discovers that the robed goddess is Athena. On hearing this, Gugu and Erika set out to find Athena to buy enough time for Yuri to seal the Gorgonian. On their way, Erika tells Goto to strap up, since his opponent is a daughter of Zeus. Immediately, Athena appears before them and states her intention to fight Goto for the Gorgonian. However, Goto says he'd rather clap the goddess than fight her. Athena then reveals that she could sense the location of the Gorgonian and launched an attack which Erika blocks. After this, Athena says Goto is a threat despite being a scrawny-looking dumb. She then says settling the conflict peacefully would bore her to death. So she imprisons Erika in a barrier and takes out Goto with a kiss of death. Just then, Erika breaks through the barrier and attacks Athena, who had better reflexes than Itachi. After several failed attacks, Erika manages to cage Athena and flees with Goto's body. Meanwhile, Yuri gets stopped by Liliana, a knight of the Bronze Black Cross who demands that she hands over the Gorgonian. In response, Yuri says it must be sealed immediately. Liliana then decides to take it by force, but almost gets knocked down by Makasu, who swerves in to save Yuri. Later that day, Goto wakes up to Erika, who then commended him on setting a new record for the fastest resurrection from the dead. Goto apologized for letting a girl kick his and Erika says he has to make it up to her somehow. When Goto freaks out saying they could be seen, Erika says they could go to her bedroom. Goto then diverts by asking about Athena and Erika says she's probably going after the Gorgonian and will soon find it. While Goto tries to figure out his next move, he asks Erika about how to use the golden sword against Athena, and she reveals he has to know all about his opponent to use the sword, to transfer her knowledge about Athena and the origins of the Gorgonian. Erika kisses Goto. Suddenly, they were interrupted by a darkness that engulfed the sky. As darkness takes over the city, Akamasu and Yuri get stuck in a traffic jam. While Akamasu talks about the starless night, Yuri says Athena must be coming for the Gorgonian. Akamasu then suggests that they ditch the car and run. Meanwhile, Ariana's crazy driving skills came in handy as she evaded the traffic jam. While she drives, Goto spots some owls flying and Erika says they're servants of Athena. Just then Goto realizes how much he still needs to know about Athena and Erika pulls him close to continue their unfinished switching business. However, Goto says they're one distracted driver away from a viral dashcam video. Yuri then calls Goto, and he tells her to call his name if Athena catches up with her, and he'll be there. Yuri then asks if that's one of his abilities, but Goto responds saying he has no idea. Back in the city, Ariane finally finds out what happens when speed meets stupidity, so Goto and Erika switch from horsepower to foot power. On their way, Erika tells Goto that he has to perfect his use of the wind incarnation by saving Yuri when she calls. She then adds that Goto is free to make Yuri his side chick if he wants, and Goto says she is a joker. At the shrine, Athena finds Yuri and demands that she hands over the Gorgonian. Yuri refuses and conjures a magical barrier. In response, Athena proves she's brought a knife to a gunfight. However, Liliana saves her sorry and urges her to hand over the Gorgonian while putting up a fight. However, not even Liliana was a worthy opponent. Eventually, Athena obtains the Gorgonian and casts a spell that transforms her into her goddess form. While she transforms, she releases the wind of death and Yuri takes a puff. Just then, Yuri calls out to Goto and passes out afterward. Before she could fall, Goto appears in time to grab her. Athena is intrigued to see Goto revived and reveals that Yuri has been poisoned by her wind of death. Goto then summons his golden sword and heals Yuri. After this, he gives Athena one last chance to leave. However, Athena says she'd like to play in her new divinity mode. Goto then asks Erika to protect Yuri while he kicks Athena's ass. In response, she kisses him to transfer the rest of the information about Athena. After this, Goto charges up, but Athena attacks first, pushing Goto into a defensive. Goto then flees while she taunts him and conjures two giant serpents. Goto then says it's his strategy to make her reveal her ace. After this, he annihilates the giant serpents while geeking out on the fun facts about Athena, revealing her origins and weaknesses. Infuriated by this, Athena tries to freeze him up, but Goto breaks free using his golden sword. He then attacks her with the sword and tells her she's not a bad as she thinks. Just then, Goto's countless flying swords aimed at Athena and cracked through her protected barrier. Eventually, Goto smashes through her protection, but uses up the golden sword's abilities in the process. Athena notices and gives him some whooping. Just then, Goto summons a horse of light from the sun, but Athena blocks it with her shield. Luckily, Erika arrives in time and gives Godo a lance, which he runs Athena through. This returns Athena to her previous form, and she asks Godo for a finishing blow. However, Dee lets her leave with her life and expose goodies. Erika asks why he did that, and Godo responds by saying he's only interested in kicking ass. Afterwards, Erika resumes being a pain in his ass and Yuri joins them. The next day, while Godo watches the news with Shizuka, Erika shows up unexpectedly and brings Yuri along. On arrival, Yuri says she's made up her mind to always talk some sense into Godo whenever he screws up. She then tells him that he and Erika can shove the PD in up their ass for starters. Pissed off, Shizuka asks Godo if he was holding auditions for a future wife. Before Godo can explain himself, Erika pulls him and demands that they leave for school. Sometime later, Godo goes to wake Erika up for school, so he tiptoes through the room like he is navigating a lingerie obstacle course. After trying to wake her, Erika says he's got the charm of a rusty doorknob, while flashing him with her freely hanging goodies. Godo suddenly turns around to avoid flooding his pants. He urges her to wear something before he explodes, so she asks him to help her get dressed. Godo hurriedly picks up her underwear like a robot on autopilot. While trying to figure it out, his buffering brains regained Wi-Fi signal, so he discarded the underwear. Meanwhile, Yuri dreams about Liliana taking orders from another campione named Vobin. Later, while she thought about the dream, Hikari, her little sister, startles her and eats out of her food. Hikari then compliments her cooking and says she's sure Godo will love it. Surprised, Yuri asks her how she knows him. In response, Hikari says Amakasu told her and accuses Yuri of trying to bewitch Godo with her cooking and more. This turns Yuri into a human ketchup bottle, and she explains that Hikari is mistaken since she only wants to serve Godo. Hikari offers to pack more food for her future brother-in-law while Yuri daydreams. Later in school, Yuri heads to class and walks in on Erika terrorizing Godo with her incredible appeal. While Godo protests, Erika openly refers to the events in her bedroom, surprising their classmates. After this, Yuri walks up to them and furiously tells them to get a room. Afterward, while Erika dazzles her fans on the baseball pitch, Yuri asks Godo if she is using magic. In response, Godo says he trusts her to play fair, even though she's mostly a walking headache. While they talk, Erika calls on Godo to play catch, but he refuses, saying he's not her love puppy. Just then, Erika challenges Yuri to a baseball match, saying she must be good for something since she's useless in combat. Yuri takes on her challenge to save her face and recruits Godo to be her catcher. The duo plans to make a bum out of Erika, but Yuri's bat keeps evading Erika's throws. In the final round, Godo works out a plan, but Yuri misses again and Erika successfully adds one more ball to his balls. Meanwhile, Liliana visits the site where Godo defeated Athena and is startled by Amakasu, who asks if she is looking for something. Liliana responds vaguely and leaves. During the lunch break at school, Yuri apologizes to Godo for his crushed nuts and shares the food Hikari packed with him and Erika. After they both complimented her cooking, Erika says that Yuri was trying to seduce Godo with her cooking. In her defense, Yuri says it's her duty to serve Godo. Just then, Erika asks Yuri if she has a phone, and she responds by saying she's not good with electronics. After this, Erika suggests that Godo go with her to get one. When Yuri protests, Erika tells her it's her best shot to talk to Godo more and suddenly agrees. She then realizes how desperate it makes her look and dashes off in embarrassment. After this, Godo asks Erika what she was planning and she says she's only allowing him to have Yuri because of her abilities. However, she vows to emasculate him if he takes on any other chick. Later at the phone store, Yuri reveals it's her first time going out with a guy. After checking the stock, Yuri decides to buy Godo's kind of phone, hoping he'd teach her to use it. Afterward, Godo shows Yuri the ropes and discovers she's a pretty face with a caveman's brain. After hours of training, Yuri is excited to finally learn how to make a call. On getting home, another campione named Salvatore calls Godo, telling him about Vobin's presence in Japan and his diverse abilities. Salvatore then asks Godo to fight Vobin to become stronger. However, Godo hangs up worried. He then decides to inform Erika, but dials Yuri's number instead. Meanwhile, while Yuri enjoys a bath, her phone rings and she rises to pick up the call. Suddenly, Liliana shows up and grabs her. Afterward, Yuri wakes up in Vobin's mansion. Debbie tells her he's bored and needs her for a ritual she once risked her life for. He then decrees that she belongs to him now. While Yuri is missing, Amakasu informs Godo and Erika that Yuri has been kidnapped by Vobin. Erika asks why Vobin would do that, and Amakasu says they share a history. He then asks them to help rescue Yuri since they are running out of time. Godo reveals what Doni told him the previous day and decides to go alone. However, Erika insists she must go with him, so he reassures Amakasu and asks him for directions. Meanwhile, in Vobin's mansion, Yuri refuses Vobin's request to summon a god and threatens to take her life. Vobin then summons some dead warriors who still serve him to prove to Yuri that her death won't stop him from using her. Hearing this, Yuri powers up and impresses him with her abilities. Shortly after, Erika and Goto arrive at the mansion and are intercepted by Vobin's dead servants. While Vobin gets notified of their presence, Erika takes out the dead servants. Just then, they encountered an ancient witch who summoned a golem. Seeing this, Erika tells Goto to save his strength for later and takes out the golem easily. Meanwhile, Yuri tries to catch up with Liliana somewhere else in the mansion. Liliana apparently isn't in the mood as she tells Yuri that Goto just infiltrated the mansion. She then reveals that Vobin has long been itching for a fight. Yuri responds by saying Goto is a lover boy campeón. Suddenly, Liliana tells her to prepare for the summoning and takes her leave. Simultaneously, Erika takes out the dead servants under Vobin's control. Goto asks if he is going to get any action, and Erika responds saying he'll need his strength since Vobin is the most ruthless of all campeons. Shortly after, when they found Vobin surrounded by his wolves, Goto identified himself and said he had come for Yuri. Hearing this, Vobin asks if Goto came with anything of equal worth to compensate him. Erika then manipulates Vobin to believe Goto became close friends with Salvatore after they dueled and discovered they were equals. She then tries to instigate Vobin against Salvatore, while Goto marvels at how creative she is at cooking up lies. In response, Vobin says he's had enough humiliation from Salvatore and his friends. He then offers to release Yuri and let them go for 30 minutes, after which he'll hunt them down. However, he says he'll admit defeat if they make it till sunrise. Shortly after, Ariane drives the trio away from the mansion. On their way, Erika tells Goto that he'd have to put the old man 6 feet under if they'll ever be free. In response, Goto asks if there is any source of information about Vobin. Erika then says there isn't much information about him since he became campeón long before the 19th century. Hearing this, Yuri asks them to return her to Vobin. Just then, Erika reminded her of how she barely survived the last ritual. After 30 minutes, Vobin let loose his wolves, so Ariana picked up the pace. Yuri then asks why they're so determined to risk their lives for her. In response, Goto says that's what friends do. Afterward, Goto returns Yuri's phone to her and asks her not to lose it again. The wolves suddenly catch up with the car and Erika asks Ariana to drop them somewhere open. After Ariana leaves, the wolves catch up with the trio and Goto prepares to take them on. However, Erika summons her sword and annihilates the wolves. Vobin suddenly appears and asks Goto if he's ready to get his ass kicked by an old man and summons a legion of dead knights. Seeing this, Goto summons the white stallion which annihilates some of the dead knights. However, Vobin transforms into a werewolf and swallows the white stallion's flames. Vobin laughs him to scorn and then says he expected more from someone who defeated Athena and Salvatore. Afterward, he decides to let his army of the dead deal with Goto. While Erika keeps the Legion busy, Goto grabs Yuri and retreats, using the Raptor's ability, and Erika follows him. After their forced retreat, Erika finishes off the last of the dead warriors. Liliana then shows up taunting her about being a show-off while drawing her sword. Seeing this, Erika summons her sword and they get ready for a duel. After using the Raptor for a while, Goto gets tired and injured, so Yuri tries to heal him with her magic. However, Goto says normal magic only works on him when injected into him. Just then, Yuri realized Erika wasn't being raunchy for nothing. Instead of kissing him, Yuri disappoints him by rubbing his chest to make him feel better. After a while, Goto asks Yuri if she knows anything about Vobin's abilities. She responds by saying she doesn't, but before she finishes, she has a vision. Goto asks her about what she saw, but they get interrupted by Akamasu, who announces that Erika is in trouble. While they fought, Erika asks Liliana if Vobin has her nudes since she wouldn't willingly serve such an asshole. Liliana then blames Erika for inspiring her grandfather with the idea when she seduced Goto and became his mistress. Yuri suddenly shows up and tries to stop the fight and asks Liliana to join them, but Liliana refuses and says she's a loyal knight. Liliana moves to attack Erika but stops when Erika talks about a secret romantic novel she wrote. Using this as leverage, Erika then convinces Liliana to be her best friend. Meanwhile, Goto asks Yuri to tell Erika about her vision to see if she knows anything about it. Afterward, Vobin instructs his ghost hounds to find his opponents. However, Goto and the others found him first. Just then, Goto gives his warrior speech, and Liliana tenders her resignation. After this, Vobin transforms into a werewolf and Erika kisses Goto, transferring information about Vobin to him. Goto suddenly pulls out his golden sword and reveals Vobin's past while slicing him with 1,000,000 swords. However, Vobin transforms back and summons more dead warriors. After Vobin orders them to attack, Erika and Liliana block the attacks and Yuri suddenly has a vision. She then tells Goto that it is possible to remake his sword. However, when he tried to, it didn't work. Erika then points out that he needs some knowledge about his opponent to make it work. Yuri then approaches Goto and kisses him to transfer her knowledge, but nothing happens. Meanwhile, Vobin's dead warriors surround Erika and Liliana, while Vobin taunts them. After this, Yuri tells Goto that the kiss has to be a real one to make it work. So they tried again and Goto's golden sword suddenly powers up. After this, Goto defeats Vobin's dead warriors. Just when they thought it was over, Vobin summons the weather deities, which enables him to control the weather. He then tries to make a barbecue out of Goto. Luckily, Goto escapes and blocks his subsequent attacks. Afterward, Goto casts a spell that allows him to control lightning and reciprocate the gestures. However, Vobin evades his attack and prepares to retaliate. Just then the girls power up and surround Goto to protect him from the attack. After this, Goto channeled the strength of his companions and defeated Vobin with a lightning blast. Vobin crawls out of the blast site and prepares for another attack. Yuri then tells them to stop the fight since it's daybreak already. Vobin then admits defeat and vows to crush Goto when they next meet. After this, Vobin and his army of the dead vanished. After this, Yuri collapses but Goto catches her and asks if she's okay. Liliana then explains that channeling her strength must have exhausted her. Just then Erika pretends to be exhausted too, so Goto rushes over to help. But she grabs him and kisses him while Liliana cringes at the sight. Sometime later during a vacation on a beach with Lucretia, Yuri, Erika, and Ariana, the girls play volleyball. Suddenly, Goto gets knocked out by the ball and the girls rush over to check him. Just then, they played the blame game and Lucretia intervened, claiming to be one of Goto's mistresses. While they argued, they squeezed Goto in between their airbags, making him wonder if he was in heaven. Later, Lucretia joins Yuri in the hot spring and tries to initiate a conversation. Yuri then tells her they're not friends since she tried to steal her man earlier on. Just then, Lucretia reaches out and grabs Yuri's floating melons. While Yuri screams in pleasure, Ariana interrupts them and says she brought some milk for them. Suddenly, Ariana slips and gets covered in milk. Meanwhile, Erika was excited to spend time alone with Goto on a boat. Goto then says she could go to jail for abducting him. In response, Erika says she had to make the move since he lacks the balls to do it.
Yeah, baby! Yeah.
Goto then recalls how he had planned a private getaway in Italy, but got sabotaged by the ladies. Immediately, Erika uncuffs Goto, and he dives into the river and swims to the bank. On getting there, he finds the ladies enjoying the hot spring and tries to run, but Yuri stops him and lectures him on how not to lose his V card. While she rants, Yuri's towel drops, giving Goto a forked display of her hidden treasures. Later that night, Goto tries to escape to keep his sanity, but is intercepted by Athena, who then tells him a battle may be approaching. After this, she takes him somewhere on a boat to show him something he'd be interested in. Meanwhile, Salvatore finds his way into an underground chamber under Napoli. Shortly after, he finds the Heronian, a grimoire shaped like a stone pillar, and tries to touch it. However, Liliana suddenly stops him and introduces herself. Salvatore then draws his sword and says he wants the Heronian power all for himself. Liliana warns him not to do anything stupid. However, being stupid is what he does for fun. So Salvatore charges up and slashes the Heronian. This releases a surge of magical energy, which then transforms into a dragon in the sky. Meanwhile, Goto and Athena spot the dragon from the boat. Athena then says it is a divine beast that has attracted a troublesome god. While the dragon flies across the sky, it gets attacked by Perseus, the troublesome god. Liliana locates the dragon where it fell and Perseus suddenly appears, introducing himself as the legendary dragon slayer. Hearing this, Liliana tells him to spare the dragon, since there will be consequences if he slays it. However, Perseus insists that it's his duty to slay dragons, and no one can stop him from doing so. After this, Perseus attacks the dragon but gets stopped by Athena before he lands the final blow. Athena then absorbs the magical dragon while Perseus draws his sword and charges up for a fight. Just then, Goto steps in and tries to prevent them from fighting. Perseus identifies Goto as a god slayer and decides to fight him instead of Athena. Liliana suddenly helps Goto escape from the area and suggests that they lay low in a copper-black cross chapter nearby. Afterward, Liliana explains what Salvatore did and says they need to eliminate Perseus as soon as possible. In response, Goto says he needs to transfer knowledge before he can go up against Perseus. Hearing this, Liliana asks Goto to tell her what she needs to do to transfer the knowledge. Goto then says the only way to get magic to work on him is by kissing him. This freaks Liliana out as she says they can't kiss to save the world. Suddenly, Perseus locates them and tries to attack. Seeing this, Goto summons the boar to save their After the attack, Perseus survives and counters Goto's attack with a spell that seals his powers. Goto then tries to escape using the raptor, but gets hit by Perseus' arrow. After Goto falls, Perseus attempts to shoot more arrows but is stopped by Athena, who tells him Goto is a more interesting opponent when he revives. Surprised to hear this, Perseus decides to withdraw and continue the fight when they both recover. After Perseus leaves, Athena asks Liliana to tell Goto when he wakes that she can't wait to kick his lame ass. While he is unconscious, Goto meets Pandora again in his dreams, and she tells him to ensure he defeats Perseus. While cheering him on later, Goto wakes up to Liliana freaking out because he forgot to notify her before dying and healed after she thought he was gone for good. Goto then apologizes to Liliana. Liliana suddenly realizes she is talking to a king and begs for his forgiveness. In response, Goto tells Liliana he isn't offended, but she insists, saying he wouldn't have died if she had just kissed him. Just then, Karen, an apprentice mage, walks in and introduces herself. She then tells Goto that Lilian watched over him throughout the night. Hearing this, Goto thanks Liliana, but she says it's the least she could do. Karen then says she heard from Ariana that Goto was on vacation, clapping the multiple cheeks of his mistresses. Hearing this, Liliana freaks out, wondering how he still manages to fight after all that. After this, Karen insinuates that Goto might also want a taste of her juices. Without thinking, Liliana switches to Adam and Eve mode while Goto screams out his lungs. Meanwhile, everything stopped working in Naples, so Goto's mistresses couldn't reach him. While Goto and Karen try to figure out what to do, Liliana drowns in embarrassment. Goto then tries to make her feel better, but she says they need to defeat Perseus and punches a hole in a wall. While they discussed, Liliana revealed that the name Perseus means one who hails from the east. Just then, Goto realizes how much he misses Erica and the other. After this, Karen asks Goto to excuse them since they had organizational matters to discuss. After he leaves, Karen advises Liliana to win Goto's heart as an accomplishment for the Bronze Black Cross, but Liliana freaks out and leaves. After this, Liliana catches Goto reading her romance novel and threatens to slaughter him. Their little drama was interrupted by Athena, who then says Goto was as tough as nails. Afterward, Goto asks Athena how Perseus could seal up his powers. In response, Athena offers to tell Goto all that he needs to know on the condition that he'll owe her a favor. Before Goto answers, Liliana rejects the offer, saying it's not befitting for a king. Hearing this, Athena decides to take her leave. Later, Liliana tells Goto he was out of line to think of accepting such an offer from a heretic god. In response, Goto apologizes for acting without thinking. Liliana then apologizes for being harsh while embarrassing Goto in public. Afterward, when Liliana tries to write her novels, her imagination runs wild, so she overreacts. However, Goto thinks she's worked up because of Perseus and promises to defeat him. Shortly after, Liliana serves Goto some tea laced with a paralytic agent to prevent him from meeting with Athena. She then promises to get every information on Perseus and leaves to meet Athena. When Liliana meets Athena, she tries to manipulate Athena to get the information. As punishment for this, Athena tries to check out her goodies but gets interrupted by Goto, who manages to make a deal and save Liliana. After Athena leaves, Goto collapses into Liliana's arms and undresses her in the process. Fortunately, Goto had passed out after this. Meanwhile, Salvatore binds up the other ladies to prevent them from reaching Goto. He then says Goto won't get any better if he's constantly helped by them. After Goto's paralysis wears off, he gets a message from Perseus, inviting him for a duel in the most distinct part of the vicinity. Later that night, Perseus speaks highly of his legendary accomplishments before a crowd and riles them up to cheer him on. Just then, Goto arrives and calls Perseus a puny god hungry for attention. In response, Perseus says such duels shouldn't be done without witnesses. Earlier that evening, in a discussion with Erica, Karen says the only way Goto can win the duel is by kissing him. However, Liliana refuses, saying she's reserving her first kiss for her Prince Charming. Hearing this, Goto tells the ladies he's heading to the bathroom. After he leaves, Karen tells Liliana that Goto is probably the one for her since they've been through a lot together. In response, Liliana says Goto already has a harem of ladies and doesn't need her. Karen then says it's okay to steal from others. Shortly after, Liliana intercepts Goto while heading out on his own. She then asks why he's setting himself up for an whooping. Goto responds and says he doesn't want to lose. Hearing this, Liliana tries to get Goto to compel her to kiss him, but Goto refuses. Liliana asks why and he responds, saying compelling her to do such would make him just like Vauban. Goto tries to leave but gets stopped by Perseus, who suddenly shows up to drag him to the arena. While they dueled, Goto charged up and hurled objects at Perseus. Perseus then asks why he fights like a sissy and Goto responds and says it doesn't matter as long as he wins. Hearing this, Perseus casts a spell to seal up Goto's powers and fires an arrow, which throws Goto off the grid. Liliana then goes after Goto to see if he is okay. When she finds him, she asks what his plan is and Godo says he'll figure something out. Liliana suddenly grabs Godo and kisses him. After this, she asks him to kiss her back since a man should take the lead. Godo then kisses her and activates his golden sword. After this, Liliana asks for more and tells him to do whatever he wants with her. While Perseus aims his bow to shoot another arrow, Godo emerges and reveals that Perseus disguises himself as a Greek god, when he is actually a Persian god. After blocking a series of attacks, Godo breaks Perseus's bow, but gets stabbed by his sword afterward. Using his camel ability, Godo sends Perseus flying with his super kick. Just then, Perseus returns and says he's starting to enjoy the fun. Using a special ability, he compels Liliana and orders her to hack Godo into pieces. Godo tries to get Liliana back to her senses, but can't. After being slashed severally by Liliana's sword, she conjured a bow and aimed at Godo. However, Liliana breaks through the spell when Godo calls her name and hits Perseus instead. Afterward, Godo engages Perseus in close range combat. When Perseus gets stuck, Liliana fires her arrows and pins him to a pillar. Just then, Godo summons his boar, which charges at Perseus. Godo passes out after this and Liliana decides to heal him with her kissing spell. To her dismay, Athena appears and beats her to it, while also giving him an extra kiss as a reward for winning. As she leaves, Athena asks Liliana to tell Godo that they'll meet again soon. Somewhere else, Perseus appears and thinks about his defeat. Just then, a dark figure appeared and sliced off his hand. The figure then claims to be the serpent that opposes heaven and transforms into a serpent that devours Perseus. The next day, while Liliana takes care of Godo, Erica and Yuri visit Godo and resume being a pain in his butt. After this, they reveal that Karen has told them everything that happened. In his defense, Godo says Liliana only serves him as a knight and nothing more. However, Erica disagrees. Back in the shrine, Yuri was summoned and was met by Ina. Ina then tells Yuri that she's expected to become Godo's favorite. In response, Yuri then says she can't, so Ina reveals she has been chosen to be one of Godo's wives. After this, they agree to share their wifely duties. During lunch break at school, Liliana tries to feed Godo, while Shizuka watches them, hoping one of them falls and breaks a rib. She then asks Erica and Yuri how they could let this happen. In response, Erica says Liliana is a nice addition to their combo. Earlier, when Liliana transferred to the school, she had also publicly pledged her life to Godo, just like Erica did. Afterward, Liliana tended to Godo like a toddler while the other girls watched. Seeing the worried look on Yuri's face, Erica reassures her that Liliana will soon wear Godo out. Later, Godo finds a letter inviting him to the tea ceremony room. While reading the letter, Liliana shows up and asks if everything is alright. A few moments later, they both arrive at the tea ceremony room and find Yuri and Ina. Ina then introduces herself and reveals that she's been chosen to marry him, just like Yuri and the others. Godo then furiously says they're all just friends, surprising Yuri. Ina then asks Yuri if she feels the same way about Godo. While Yuri's mouth refuses to open, Liliana interjects, asking what Ina plans to achieve by causing trouble. Ina then calls Liliana a second-rated concubine, provoking her. However, everyone's attention was suddenly drawn to Erica's presence in the room. Ina then says she's been looking forward to talking to Erica. Just then, they both decided to go talk elsewhere. Later, while Godo, Yuri, and Liliana wait for Erica, Godo says Erica has been gone for too long, and Liliana says she'll be okay as long as it's just negotiations. After this, Erica arrives and Godo hurriedly asks if she did anything stupid. In response, Erica says she's not a dummy like him. Just then, Godo suggests that they go grab a bite together, but Yuri and Liliana pull a rain check and leave. Facing Erica, Godo asks if she wants to go home with him. Erica responds saying he could spend the day with Shizuka instead. Shortly after, Shizuka was all up his asking about the new girl. Afterward, Liliana goes for a swim and finds Yuri brooding at the pond too. They then ignore each other while Erica watches from afar. Shortly after this, Godo and Shizuka spend some time together eating on the school roof. Just then, Erica interrupts and says she's come to ask Godo out on a date. This infuriated Shizuka, and she leaves angrily. Erica then asks Godo if he knows why Yuri and Liliana are acting funny. Later that day, Erica calls Liliana and Yuri to inform them of her date with Godo. A few moments later, they head out and Erica asks if Godo has figured out where they are going. Reading the clueless look on his face, Erica threatens to crush his face. Afterward, while she tries on some new lingerie, Erica asks Godo to pick one for her, since he'll be undressing her soon enough. Hearing this, Godo's brain jump starts, so he says he's figured out a nice spot for their date. Afterward, they spend lots of time eating and having fun. After all this, Erica asks Godo about where next he plans to take her. After shuffling through options, Erica figures out where she wants to go. Meanwhile, at the shrine, Liliana panics. Yuri then asks her to calm down, but she says she can't when someone else is probably taking her man to the seventh heavens. Liliana then asks why Yuri is so calm, and she responds by saying she's just feeling numb from the shocker she got earlier in the day. Erica and Godo explored the site where he defeated Athena, and they reminisced about their first victory together. Just then, Anna shows up to challenge Erica to a duel. After clashing swords for a while, Godo stops them from chopping each other up. However, Anna charges up to show her strength, but Godo stops her and gets sucked into the netherworld. Just then, Erica decides to go after him, so Ina goes after her too. Meanwhile, Athena literally crashes in on Godo's residence and apologizes to Shizuka for the late visit. She then asks if Godo is home. In the netherworld, Godo wanders around and finds a cabin in the forest. A voice then invites him to come in. On entering, he meets Susanoo, who introduces himself as Ina's guardian. The next day, Shizuka screams about how much of a pain it is to have a manhole for a brother. Just then, she spots Shizuka sniffing Godo's pillow. Shizuka then asks who Athena is to her brother. In response, Athena says Godo is a premium subscriber on her private Snap, while Shizuka freaks out. Meanwhile, Erica and Anna arrive in the netherworld and resume their duel for Godo's heart. Back at the cabin, while Susanoo enlightens Godo about the netherworld, Godo suddenly learns all about Susanoo. This makes his golden sword appear unexpectedly, so Susanoo says he'd have challenged Godo to a duel if he hadn't retired. Godo then asks why he was brought to the netherworld. In response, Susanoo says he just wants to transfer some power to Ina. To satisfy Godo's curiosity, Susanoo gives him a peek at Erica, getting her whooped by Ina. Susanoo then tells Godo that they've got some business to take care of before he can play knight in shiny armor. While they dueled, Anna let her sword possess her fully and absorbed Erica's mana. After this, she approaches Erica to land her final blow. Meanwhile, Yuri has visions of Ina's actions and reveals to Liliana that their friends have been sucked into the netherworld. While they try to figure out a way to get them back, Akamasu shows up offering to help. When Liliana questions his motive, he reveals that Godo's services will be needed since a strange darkness is covering the skies everywhere. In the netherworld, Godo arrives just in time to save Erica. Using his golden sword, he forces the possessed Ina to retreat. As Erica slowly loses energy, Godo tries to teleport her back to Earth, but ends up in unexpected places. Back at Godo's residence, Athena reveals she's been burned and pierced by Godo, making Shizuka believe her brother is a nutjob with no restrictions. Athena then hears about the strange phenomenon happening worldwide, and suddenly vanishes. In the netherworld, Erica asks Godo for a last kiss in case she never makes it. Godo responds saying he's not in the mood for her jokes. Just then, Erica makes her last requests and confesses her love for Godo, telling him how he stole her heart. Godo suddenly locks lips with Erica and screams out of frustration afterward. Just then, Godo unlocks a new ability from Virthragna's spirit. After making Erica promise to stand by him always, Godo infuses his magic into Erica and gives her divine protection while she makes happy noises. Meanwhile, while Liliana tries to teleport Yuri to the netherworld, they get interrupted. In the netherworld, Ina reappears fully possessed by a monster and attacks Godo and Erica. However, Erica defends using her sword. Immediately, Godo uses the raptor's ability to rescue Ina from the beast, but rips off her clothes in the process. While Godo freaks out for seeing her forbidden fruits, Ina transforms and kisses him for saving her. Just then, Erica calls Godo's attention to the monster, but they hear a loud noise, and the netherworld suddenly crumbles around them. They then find themselves reunited with Liliana and Yuri at the shrine. However, the power of Ina's sword was absorbed by Metis, Athena's evil replica. Just then Athena arrives, surprising them all. While they wonder what is going on, Godo reveals that he learned from Susanoo that Metis is Athena's mother and a psychopath whose bucket list includes swallowing the sky and plunging the world into darkness. Just then, Erica states that the protagonist of the Starless Night prophecy was actually Metis, and not Athena. Suddenly, Metis conjures Ina's sword and wreaks tremendous havoc while trying to take out Godo. Luckily, Athena manages to save Godo from her lunatic mother. Godo then asks about how Metis could wield Ina's sword. In response, Erica gives a history lesson explaining why. She then tells Godo to take Athena and run since it would be disastrous if Metis absorbed her powers. Godo then says he can take her on, but Erica responds by saying he's their trump card and shouldn't be used up at the beginning of the fight. Ariana and Amaxu suddenly arrive in a car to pick up Godo and Athena, leaving the ladies to talk about their love for Godo. Suddenly, Metis charges up for another attack and Erica steps up to block it. On their way, Amakasu asks Ariana to drive towards Natfuji. He then says it has a shrine that could protect them and hide their presence. Shortly after, they discovered Athena had lost her memory and powers and concluded that Metis must have absorbed them. Meanwhile, Erica puts up a good fight against Metis, leveraging Godo's divine protection. Liliana then joins forces with Erika while Yuri and Enoch cast a spell to bind Metis. After this, Erika and Liliana jointly attack Metis but get their handed to them. Metis then goes after Godo while causing massive destruction. Godo then stands up to her and gives her a chance to go back to hell. However, Metis says she needs her daughter. Metis suddenly attacks Godo, and he fights back using up his abilities. However, his powers are ineffective against Metis, so she creatively teaches him true suffering. Athena suddenly grabs Metis' weapon to buy Godo some time. Just then, Godo summons the White Stallion to attack Metis. After this, Metis walks out of the wreck unscratched, surprising Godo. Metis then picks up Athena and absorbs what is left of her. She then suddenly transforms into her true goddess form. However, Godo refuses to back down. Just then his mistresses arrive to support him. Yuri and Nana then kiss Godo to reveal Metis' weakness. Using his golden sword, Godo attacks Metis, but can't land a hit. After this, Metis retaliates but her attack gets blocked by Erika and Liliana. Liliana then kisses Godo to restructure his sword. After this, he reveals Metis' secrets and cracks open her defenses. Erika then kisses Godo too to reactivate his sword. So he attacks Metis and she splits from Athena. After they all join forces, Godo summons the boar, but Metis makes it vanish. Afterward, she tries to reabsorb Athena, but Godo suddenly summons Athena with the gale. Athena then kisses Godo and reactivates his powers. Together, they attack Metis, and she finally crashes with a loud bang. Afterward, the darkness vanished and everything was restored to normal. Athena then bids Godo farewell and vanishes while Godo collapses from exhaustion. Sometime later in Godo's house, Shizuka asks Godo why they're throwing an oestrogen party, and he responds by saying he has no idea how he became a ladies' magnet. If you made it to the end, confuse the fake fans by commenting Erika is banged up. And if you like anime recaps like this, then watch this video right here.